Hi, Mrs. Schmidt here. Just wanted to create this little video to help you review some of the problems for Mr. Lewis's class for our quiz that's on Friday on translations and reflections. So I have a few problems here, translations and reflections. I'll work through them and you can just follow along with me. This first one is actually a non-example. So when you're translating these points, remember to translate means to slide. And you can remember that because in translate you have an SL and in the word slide you have an SL. So when we're translating something, like if I were to translate this paper clip, I'm literally sliding it. And our problems tell us how far to translate it. Or slide it. So this one says translation 3 units right, 7 units down. And if you look, this first point was translated to the right, but not down. So let's, in pencil, so I can erase it, do this first image here. So I'm going to move the first point, this I, 3 units to the right and 7 units down. So if I go to the right, 1, 2, 3, and 7 units down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My new I prime is going to go right there. Okay? See if I can mark that out. Okay? So my new point is going to go right there. But if you look at this image, I have 4 points. So I have to do all of them. 3 units to the right and 7 units down. I'm going to do H next. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My new H is going to go right there. And it's not called new H, even though I call it that. It's H prime. Okay, same thing with our G. Let's go 3 to the right. 1, 2, 3. And 7 units down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to go right there. Okay, if I move my F, I'm going to go 3 to the right and 7 down. 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now if I connect all those dots, I should have the same image. And it does not have to be perfect. Make sure you label all your points with your prime. There we go. That is a translation of that first image. Literally the exact image, just slid down 3 units to the right and 7 units down. I would get in the habit of always doing it in order, 3 units to the right and 7 units down, because it's going to totally screw everything up if you just go down or just to the right and you forget. So that and is important. But let's look at number 2. It tells us to do a translation 2 units down. So only 2 units down, a translation, and remember that means sliding again. So I'm going to choose a point. I'm going to start with K, and I'm going to go 2 down. 1, 2. I'm going to do 2 down with J. 1, 2. And then I'm going to go 2 down with I. 1, 2. I'm going to connect all my dots. And if you look, I have the exact same image, but 2 units down. And make sure you label all your points like this. K is no longer K, it's K prime. So if we just showed somebody this part right here, they would know this was our original image and this was our translation, because that prime, that apostrophe, in math it's a prime, tells us that it moved. So those are translations. Make sure when it says right, you're going to the right. When it says left, you're going to the left. Up is up, and down is down. Okay? Alrighty. Let's look at some reflections now. So number 5 tells us to do a reflection across the x-axis. So let me remind you, we've talked in class about x and y axis and how we tell them apart. I'll give you a second to think about that. How you can identify your x and y axis. Because Mr. Lewis labeled them for us, but we're not always going to have a label, so we need to know which is our x and which is our y. The x-axis, if you had a coordinate plane like this, your x-axis, 2 ways to remember it. You have your X-man that can walk along the x-axis. Some of you remember it that way. And you have your Y guy that can climb on the y-axis. Your X goes across, because there's no way that X-man could walk across the y-axis. So the X1 walks across, the Y guy is climbing up the middle. So there's your visual, if that helps you remember it that way. Or we've got our little rhyme, our little saying. I guess it doesn't really rhyme. X to the left. I hope you're waving your arms to the left and right like we do in class. And Y to the sky. Y to the sky. X goes right to left. Y goes up to the sky. Okay? Whichever one you need to use to remember it. But it's so important because a reflection across the x-axis is a whole lot different than a reflection across the y-axis, which I'm going to show you right now. So, reflections are a little different. This says reflect across the x-axis. So the first thing I need to do is say, okay, this is my x-axis here, going horizontally across. And it wants me to take this image and reflect it across the x-axis. So the very first thing I'm going to do is identify a point I want to reflect first. I'm going to reflect this V right here because it's actually going to be the same exact point. If I folded this paper across the x-axis, that V is going to be the exact same spot. So V prime. And then I'm going to go ahead and reflect my Y. The way to do this is to look. Y is 1 unit up. So I know when I reflect it, it needs to be 1 unit below my x-axis. So that's Y prime. And then my X is, goodness, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units up. So I know my X prime is going to be 5 units down from the x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. X prime. Okay, my W is, find your x-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4 units up. So I know I need to go 4 units down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I play the game of connect the dots. Duh, duh. It does not ever have to be perfect. We do not expect perfection when drawing. I mean, obviously, if we're taking our test on the computer, then it's a little easier to make your lines perfect. But this, you can see, is a reflection. Say I had folded my paper across the x-axis. It looks the same up here as it does down here. But remember, my new points, as I label them, become primes. Okay, one more that asks us to do a reflection across the y-axis. Okay, so which one is my x and which is my y? Remember, y goes up to the sky. So I'm going to flip this image over here. Remember, reflection, I should do this on the last problem. Reflection, we can remember that we're flipping it because I have a FL in reflection and an FL in flip. Okay, so I'm flipping this image over here across the y-axis. Okay, if I look, I'll start with my W. I'm going to count over from the y-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4. So y-axis, 1, 2, 3, 4. The x is 1 over, so I can just go ahead and do that. Now I look at where my V is. V's right here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 over. 1, 2, 3, 4 over. Ta-da! I need to label my new points. W prime. You really probably should label them as you make them, which I did not just show you to do that, but I would do that so you don't get confused. Remember to add your prime. And we did a reflection over the y-axis. So that's it for our test review, or our quiz review for your quiz on Friday.